Good Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Tomorrow we will hear from the coordinators for the Browns. Also expect to hear a little bit from Deshaun Watson. Media availability week 2 of OTAs. Let's listen in as one of the Browns' new linebackers, Jordan Hicks, was mic'd up out in Berea.
What's up, y'all? Come on. Let's go. Great energy, huh? Start with energy. Uh-huh. Good to see you, dog. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's go. I can't fall back on that. That was stupid. Hey, let's go right here. Yep. I'm here. Let's go! Turn up, Tom.
Hey, let's go out here, be injured, man. Let's bust our ass today, man. Let's compete. Every rep, every snap, every rep.
Yeah.
Compete. Let's work, man. Hey, go 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Loud noises. Scream. Come on. Here we go. Put it down. Yeah. Talk to yourself. I like it. Thank you, Jesus. Chip to the flat, in return. Oh, he did not want that throw. Yeah. I feel like it's a quick. You make one dude miss instantly. You get off a block instantly.
And then shoot.
That's what I'm saying. Then just find the ball. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see none of that. It's my side. Strong side, my side. Hey, turn this off during the conditioning test.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, it's kind of interesting. So you get an idea of some of the things that are going on, some of the communication and just kind of getting a feel. You see that's Jordan Hicks, veteran, a guy that's had 5 straight years, 100 tackles plus, and he was like, I can't go underneath. So it just gives you an idea of some of the things that are happening out in Berea.
Yeah, and there's not many questions surrounding this defense. That most of the guys are returning, but you do have a new component. You lost Anthony Walker, you bring in Hicks, and you're kind of seeing how he's gelling, how he's fitting with the teammates, ingratiating himself, and how he's going to be a vocal leader and a vocal presence. Because while there's tons of playmakers on that side of the ball, there's not a lot of vocal leadership. Just to see someone like Hicks step in and immediately try to take that, I think that's what you want to see, especially this time of year.
All right, so they're going through OTAs the second week. We'll have media availability a little later this week, tomorrow, because Deshaun Watson's scheduled to throw. What are you paying close attention to in the second week of OTAs?
Well, first and foremost, it's no injuries. I think that's the big key is, you can't win the Super Bowl in May, but you could lose it if you lose enough key people. So keep everybody healthy, keep everybody working. But just to touch on what I said on the last segment is, it's who's going to be a leader. Like this is, you got to gel together, and you have to have people to step up and take roles. And to see Hicks demonstrate leadership capabilities, on the offensive side of the ball, that has to happen as well. We saw what happened last year. I believe Nick Chubb was the heart of the team, and when you lost him, it took a minute. But David Njoku stepped up in that role and became that guy. Now he's not there right now, so who's going to step up and be a leader? Who's going to get people to gravitate towards them and really steer this ship? Because that's what you're kind of figuring out. You're formulating how this team's going to gel and like what each component is going to be. So you need to identify who your leaders are going to be.
All right, this one's from the Bleacher Report. Main obstacle facing every quarterback entering a make-or-break season. For Deshaun Watson, they say lack of offensive support. Receiving core is okay. Jedrick Wills is a potential liability at left tackle. There's no way of knowing what to expect from Nick Chubb as he continues to recover from major knee surgery. Casey, I get what they're saying. There's truth to what they say there. I also think for the first time, the Browns are really trying to build an offense around Deshaun Watson. They kind of were trying to fit Watson into Kevin Stefanski's offense, and I think they kind of looked at it and said, all right, that's not exactly what we want. let's go and try it a different way.
Yeah, when I look at what the main obstacle is for Deshaun Watson, it's not the people around him. I mean, they cite Jedrick Wills being a liability, which I think is pretty strong language. I think he's an average left tackle. And I think there are more teams in the NFL with below average than average left tackles. There's probably only 5 or 6 legit, elite offensive tackles. And then you look at the running back room, even without Nick Chubb, I still think this is an above average room. With Nick Chubb, it's extraordinary. There's plenty of options in the passing game. The main obstacle for Deshaun Watson is himself. It's getting outside of his head and becoming the best version of himself. You saw in the fourth quarters of games last year when he had to go out there and make plays. That's what he was doing. He wasn't thinking, getting outside of his head and just making things happen. That's what he needs to get back to. That's the main obstacle. He needs to figure out how to be the best version of himself, because it's definitely not the people around him. It's himself.
Yeah. The other thing is, I believe it's an 8-4 record in games he started. So, Bottom line is winning. I get the whole numbers thing. I get you're paying him a boatload of money. If you're winning, a lot of things are cured.
Yeah, everything. So much stuff gets swept under the rug when you're winning games, and that's what it comes down to: is stacking those wins and getting into the season. And then you can evolve as the season goes along, but you got to win. That's point blank period, and that's why you've constructed everything. That's why you paid him all the money you paid him, was to win games. And it can be ugly. That doesn't matter at the end of the day, because each win counts the same.
All right, so we've talked about how tough the Browns' schedule is. When you go by record last year, it's the toughest schedule in the NFL. So you've ranked the opposing quarterbacks' 2024 schedule. We had Mahomes number 1, Joe Burrow number 2, Lamar Jackson number 3. They face those guys every year twice. Justin Herbert number 4, and Dak Prescott number 5. I expect Justin Herbert, with Jim Harbaugh as his head coach, to take a huge step forward.
Yeah, if we're talking about somebody who might be encumbered by the players around him, it could be Herbert, because they took some receivers from him. But if I'm looking at just pure talent, he's the only quarterback that I see in this league that could rival Mahomes and talent. We don't know what it's going to look like with Harbaugh, but we've seen Harbaugh in the NFL. We've seen it work with lesser quarterbacks. So I fully expect, it might take a minute or two, and you play them in the front half of the schedule, which is a good thing, because Harbaugh's proven to be a winner at every level he's been at. And he might not have the same kind of volume he's had, but Herbert might be even more efficient with Harbaugh leading the charge.
Yeah, and you talk about Mahomes. We don't have to say much more about that. Prescott, I mean, that is you could throw Hurts on that as well. I know he didn't play well last year. Remember, 2 years ago, they were talking about him MVP kind of guy.
Yeah, Hurts, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, those guys are right out of the top 5. So it's a murderer's row when you get to the front half of that. Dak's interesting because I don't think he has the receiving core he's had in years past, but this is a contract year. Expect him to ball out. He's going to throw for ridiculous numbers. That's just who he is. And when we talk about Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, we know what kind of problems they present. Now, the Browns have played successfully against Joe Burrow, but you can't ignore the fact that, you can't feel good if the game's on the line and the ball's in that kid's hands. He's that type of quarterback. He's a winner. And Mahomes, real shocker there. He's 28 years old and he's already won 3 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. He's got all the hardware. Now he's just playing for legacy. And until someone dethrones him, he's going to stay in that top spot.
All right, so this from the Bleacher Report. NFL teams that should consider major changes without winning a Super Bowl next season. They say the Browns. At this point, it's all about the quarterback in Cleveland. If Stefanski and his staff can't maximize what they have behind center, either they or the quarterback shouldn't be with the team beyond this season. Haslams aren't exactly known for their patience. The Haslam line previous was fair. Stefanski and Andrew Berry are getting extensions. You can say whatever you want, and I don't think Deshaun Watson is going anywhere. They're going to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah. Shout out to Brent Sobleski who wrote that. He started the article with a Ricky Bobby quote, so he already had me won over. I just think we're in a different spot than we've been in years past because, yes, the Jimmy Haslam being impatient, the first 7 years of their ownership tenure, it was tumultuous. There was quick triggers left and right, but that's not who they've been for the past 5 seasons. And I think that you're just in such a different place. So, and the title of the article is misleading because if they don't win a Super Bowl, major changes. No, you could just run into Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. But when you look at the people in place here, I just think that if it falls flat on his face and it's a complete failure to launch, I think Stefanski stays and Watson goes. But I don't think that's the end result. But I just think if it were to play out like that, just think about the situation you're in where you would keep the coach over the quarterback. I just think that they've already placated to him. They've moved everything around to fit him. So if it really doesn't work to no degree at all, I just think that that's the direction that they would lean.
Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
We need to bring a Super Bowl to Cleveland. We're more concerned about putting up a stadium to replace the one that's barely 30 years old because we want a dome stadium. It'd be nice if dome stadium, Super Bowl trophy. Never a mention to bring a Super Bowl trophy to the city of Cleveland. What difference does it make what month we mention it in? But I'm telling you, the leadership is terrible, and until we change that, we're going nowhere. Have a great day, guys. See ya. Bye.
As always, appreciate the voicemails. Casey, I disagree. You look at the roster, and by most accounts, one of the top rosters in the NFL. So the leadership's pretty good. I mean, relative to the stadium, that's completely separate from everything else. What you're doing by trying to get a dome stadium is create an area where you can bring other events to that, a Super Bowl, those kind of things.
Yeah, I got bad news for the caller. This leadership isn't going anywhere. They're entrenched. Like you said earlier, they're going to be extended. And look at what they've built. We can't ignore what we've come from to where we're at now, and just the level of talent that's on this team. That's a credit to Andrew Berry. You played 5 different quarterbacks and still won 11 games last year. That's a credit to the coaching. The leadership is fine, and the stadium is a completely separate conversation. And I can't fault someone for wanting to have state-of-the-art facilities. When you look around the league at these other teams that have that, and you see what they're able to do with it, that's the direction you need to go. And now that's not going to happen for the next 5 years, so there's no point even worrying about that today. The focus in that building is to win the championship. Only one team gets to hold it at the end of the year, so there's always going to be 31 disappointed teams. So if you don't win it year in, year out, you can't look at that as failure. It's all about steps. And they've been taking these steps, let's be real, since 2018. This is a gradual process, and you're now finally to the point where you can reap those rewards. So that's what this has all been building to. You have the talent. Now they just have to go out in the field and prove it.
And again, they do talk about a Super Bowl very briefly. It does no good to constantly say Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. It's counterproductive, and it actually harms the goal of reaching a Super Bowl if you're constantly talking about it.
Yeah. Just know that it's the goal. It doesn't have to be the focal point of every conversation they have every time they're behind a microphone, but know that that's what this is all about. And that's not just for the Browns. That's all 32 teams. That's the end game, but only one team gets to hold it.
The other thing I would say about the Browns Stadium, and people have really short memories, when they built that, they had to do shortcuts to make it fit and get it done within the constructs of what was there. So they knew they were shortcutting that stadium. They took out certain things that they wanted in to meet the deadlines that they had.
Yeah, and even the best made stadiums, they don't make it 40 years now. That's just the nature of the business. You build a stadium, within the next 40 years, you're going to be opening your next stadium. And that's the same timeline the Browns are on, even with the shortcuts they took. So I think it's just a natural progression of pro sports.
All right, time to move on. This is PFF roster rankings for all 32 teams. For the Browns, they rank them as the 12th best roster in the NFL. Biggest strength for 2023, they say, is the defense. Isn't a weak spot to be found across the defense. Along the defensive line, you have Myles Garrett, Player of the Year. You got Zadarius Smith, linebacking core, Jeremiah Koromoa, Ward, Newsome, Emerson, the cornerbacks. The one thing that will be interesting to see, Casey, can the defense take a step forward in year 2 under Jim Schwartz? They were one of the best defenses in football. Got to play better on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that the strength is the defense. You look across the board, you have stars at every single level, and you got good depth. You got playable depth that you can come in, rotate, and keep these guys fresh. And to your point, it's what can they do in year 2 under Jim Schwartz? It's completely, do they develop a counterpunch? Because we know what they can do, what their strength is on defense, but teams are going to work everything they can to take that away. But what can you do to counter that? That's something they need to develop this offseason and figure out how to take their game on the road. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have to do when it gets late in the season, and you only have, I think, 3 of your final 8 games at home. You're going to have to prove it on the road against some really good teams. So that's what it all comes down to for this defense. We know they have the talent. We know they have the leadership in place, but can they gel together and make a difference, especially when it counts in December?
So they say the biggest weakness in 2023 is wide receiver depth. It's a fair criticism because Elijah Moore hasn't lived up to being a second-round pick. Jerry Jeudy hasn't lived up to being, a first-round pick. Cedric Tillman, young guy. David Bell hasn't really done much. The one thing I would say, the game, the offense, the way it's been run under Kevin Stefanski, there's a reason Nick Chubb was viewed as one of the best running backs in the NFL. They're still going to run the football. It'll be interesting to see, is there more wealth to go around passing the football?
Yeah, there's only one football, so it's hard to keep a bunch of guys happy. But I like what they've done in this wide receiver room. I like how young they are. I like how dynamic the room's built. So they've got a bunch of guys who do different things. But then you also have 3 separators between Cooper, Jeudy, and Moore. These guys naturally create separation. And once you have that, you can build an offense just around that set alone. And the young guys like Tillman, yes, he has a lot to prove, but he has a different skill set than the other guys, different body type. David Bell, I think that's just what he is. He's a depth possession receiver. You need those type of guys on your roster. Do they wow you? No. But when it matters and you can sneak him in on 3rd down and he can find a soft spot in his zone, you got a guy that can do that. And then you go and draft a guy like Jamari Thrash, who's also a separator, but he can hurt you vertically. So they're adding a bunch of different pieces, and they're young. And then you have the stable presence of Amari Cooper. I think he raises the floor of room just because of how steady he is. And yes, these guys are unproven, but I really love the ceiling of that room. If I were to name a weakness, it would be tight end, because after David Njoku, I really don't know what you have.
X factor for 2024, this one's not a surprise. They go with the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and in part it's because nobody knows exactly what to expect. They say the experiment has been shaky, to say the least. I don't know that that's necessarily fair. He didn't play well the first, after the suspension. He was hurt last year. When you're not on the field consistently, it's tough to be a good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about it before too. Like, yeah, it was inconsistent, but we saw him play well in the 4th quarter of games. Mm-hmm. And that's at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want a guy that when he has the ball in his hand in the 4th quarter, you feel good about your opportunities. And that's what he gave you. But it's fair that he's the X factor because we don't know what it's going to be. We haven't we hadn't had the consistent snaps, let alone the play. So we need to see that over time before we even know what you have there. But if it clicks, all of a sudden you're scoring 28, 29 points a game. And with the way this defense plays, and if you can take a lead in the 4th quarters, this defensive ends can hunt, and you start to see the build. But it all does come down to Deshaun Watson. And if he's able to fire and get the ball to these playmakers that they do have on the outside.
So along those lines, they go with a rookie to watch. Again, this is all from the PFF roster rankings. Rookie to watch, they go wide receiver Jamari Thrash. Again, they mentioned the no first-round picks. That's fine. One day 3 pick that could be intriguing, 5th round wide receiver Jamari Thrash. And the reason I dismiss all that, the Browns have been, it's not like they haven't been able to make any moves because of that Watson trade. So I'm kind of getting sick of hearing about it. But Thrash is an interesting pick in the 5th round that he was there.
Yeah. And the only thing is good luck seeing the field. Like,
yeah,
you got enough guys in front of you that it's going to be hard to make a splash, especially early, to even to get reps. But that's good that you got competition. You're bringing a guy in. I do like how dynamic he can be. I like how he can threaten the vertical level. He's good. He's good at yards after the catch. You like the things he brings to the table. But at the end of the day, he's a rookie, and there's plenty of guys in front of him. So it's going to be just an effort to see the field on a consistent basis to make a difference. If I were to pick a rookie, probably I might go Nathaniel Watson. Michael Hall, I think that those guys have a clearer path to getting on the field and making a difference, especially early. But I do like Thrash's upside. I just don't know if we see it come to fruition, especially early in his rookie year.
Yeah, it's important to remember he's a 5th round pick as a wide receiver as well. All right, before we go to break, the last one with that over under, they go 8.5. 8.5 win total is the over under. They go over, and. Yeah, I think 8.5 is ridiculously low. Heck, they won 11 last year, starting 4 different quarterbacks. I know the schedule is more difficult. Schedule is always going to be tough for an AFC North team.
Yeah, the schedule thing, it's like, yeah, it is tougher than last year, but I think that if you think you're a team of consequence, that's what you want. You want these marquee games. You want to go prove yourself against the best competition you can. It's the NFL, and I try not to be dramatic about it, but to me, that 8.5 over under, that's borderline disrespectful. They're able to supersede that with a myriad of injuries last year. So short of something catastrophe like that happening to where you're down 5, 6, quality starters, I think 8.5, it should be a cakewalk just based on the talent you have on this roster. I think that even if they were to have to pivot and go to their backup quarterback, I think this could be a double-digit win team with Jameis Winston. So 8.5 to me, that's way too low, and I would smash the over.
Casey Kinman from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. And now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Coming back, NFL Game Day. Who do they think is the most complete roster in the NFL? We'll tell you when we return on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. This from The Athletic, Mike Sando, national writer. The move from each NFL team this offseason that he liked the most. For the Browns, re-signing Zadarius Smith. Smith's, you see they signed him an $11.5 million contract for a couple of years. Turns 32 in September. The one thing I would say, Casey, Smith's first year here was when Myles Garrett broke through and won that Defensive Player of the Year. I think that those two things are more closely related than just circumstance. Smith allows Myles Garrett to be a little bit better than if he's not here.
This article, Zadarius was a huge get to get him back, and I felt decent about it going into the offseason. They'd be able to re-sign him, but I figured it'd be late in the process. He'd weigh his options longer, try to skip out on OTAs, maybe sign in July. But you could tell he wanted to be here. And we're talking about a guy who's played at other organizations like the Ravens, Green Bay, Minnesota. He chose Cleveland. He had other options. He knows they have something special, and he came back here. And if you just look at what he was able to do last year, you talk about Myles Garrett. Myles had 89 pressures. Zadarius had 61. Now he only had 6 sacks, but I think that that's what you see in this second year here is he converts more of that. I just think that somebody who can get 61 pressures opposite of Myles Garrett, I think it's a no-brainer to bring that guy back into the fold if you can possibly do it. And I fully expect Za'Darius to push for double-digit sacks this year.
All right, this is from NFL Game Day. Ranking the most complete teams for the 2024 season. Number 1, they go 49ers. Number 2, Ravens. 3, Chiefs. Lions 4, Eagles 5, Bengals 6, Texans 7, Packers 8, Browns 9, and Jets 10. I think 9 is really low. Again, I think they probably are that low based on the question marks surrounding Deshaun Watson. But, when I look at it, you telling me Jordan Love's going to have the same kind of year? Are you telling me the Lions, Jared Goff? I'm just not seeing it with some of them.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, this is just another extension of the Watson tax. People aren't high on Watson, and I mean, I get it. I get why they wouldn't be high on Watson. But this roster is, even with the doubts of Watson, they're still saying this is a top 10 roster in the league. And if it clicks, I'd say it's hard to argue they're not at least top 5. That's the variance. And if people had faith in the quarterback, you would see them a lot higher on these lists. They don't, and that's fine. But he has to go prove it. And this is the good thing is he has the opportunity to do so. If he goes out there and has a crazy September and October, all of a sudden those power rankings, the Browns are going to be one of the first teams out of people's mouth just because of what they can do on the defense, the playmakers. Who knows if Nick Chubb's back? You get all these pieces and Watson's really clicking. It's impossible to deny where this roster's at.
All right, this is interesting as well. So Jerry Jeudy's average yard after catch, yak per reception, the past 2 years, among NFL wide receivers with 80-plus targets. He was 6th in 2023, 5.9, tied for 3rd in 2022, 6.1. Cleveland was 19th in the league. So, again, another reason Browns were interested in Jerry Jeudy, the yard after the catch. And other than David Njoku, that's not something that Amari Cooper excels in, not something that Elijah Moore excels in. David Njoku does, but it gives them another guy. Get it to him, get the ball in his hands. He gets some easy yards with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, it was easy to see the appeal. Obviously, he's still super young. He's versatile as far as his alignment. You can move him all over the place. He's a separator, but he gets yards after the catch. Like that is crucial for this wide receiver room because, like you said, that's not Amari Cooper's go-to. Can he do it at times? Yes, but it's almost dependent upon who's guarding him. Moore, we really don't know because of the way he was used. His average depth of target was so low. It just didn't fit, I don't think, what he does best. I think we get to see that this year. We know Njoku can do it. Well, now you bring another guy in that you just got to get the ball in his hands and he can move the chains. I don't know what kind of volume he's going to see. There's only one football, and there's a lot of guys to get the ball too. But getting someone who's efficient with the ball in his hands after the catch, who's slippery, he's got good play strength in the field. I just think that's invaluable. And then you have him for the foreseeable future, so you can start to build around him and build a role for him. And it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds.
All right, so I know it's still early in OTAs. Your thoughts on how different this offense will look with the entirely remade offensive coaching staff and Ken Dorsey kind of designing things?
Yeah, it's just interesting to see what kind of splits they're going to use, what kind of formations they're going to rely on, and what kind of motion they're going to be using. It's all TBD. We don't know. We don't know what there's so many different moving parts because these guys all came from different places, all different modalities and thought processes, different philosophies, and they're all coming together to meld to make something. And we're hoping this to make something special that works with the players they already have in house. But you have a good canvas to paint on, So I do think that it's going to be more motion heavy. You're going to get to see a lot of different alignments and just personnel usage situations where I think that you see David Njoku vertical more than you have in years past because you have guys that you can use underneath and kind of let him work the seam and take advantage of his athleticism. So I want to see a lot more shotgun. That's another thing I need to see. Not for anything else, just to get Watson comfortable, get him seeing the field the way he's used to seeing the field, and let him operate from that. You have the players in place that can make that work. You can use Nyheim Hines as a running back out of shotgun. So you have the pieces in place. I just expect it to be more dynamic and more wide open.
Do you think it's fair to say that we didn't see the offense change drastically with Watson from what it was last year? I was expecting more changes. Were you? Did you? And the injuries happened so quick. I get it.
Yeah, I was expecting more because we saw more in training camp. You saw it be more wide open in training camp, and it seemed that when they got to the season, obviously game one, terrible weather. It's really hard to open it up there. Week 2, you're in Pittsburgh on a Monday night. That's a nightmare scenario. That was a failure to launch game. The offense really never got to get going. The Chubb injury happens. Week 3, he plays well. You start to see it open up. He gets hurt. Kind of back to the drawing board. And then so you never really got to see it take flight. But we saw what happened when they really couldn't open it up. As Stefanski did regress back to what he knows, and that's why Flacco was so successful. He can operate in that kind of system. So they really had to scrap it and pull it apart and build it back with different pieces from the coaching staff to make it look different. Because if not, at the end of the day, if they start to fail, you see the direction they would go. And if you really want to find out if Watson can do this, you can't have that as a safety net.
Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily, Barking Browns podcast, and I can step aside. Take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about wide receivers and biggest concerns for the Browns in 2024. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. These are the highest paid wide receivers for 2024 based on their cap hit. This is from NFL Stats. So number 1 is Tyreek Hill, $31.3 million. Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, DJ Metcalf, $24.5 million. Kirk, $24.2 million. McLaurin, $24.1 million. Then it's Amari Cooper at $23.8 million. Keenan Allen at $23.1 million. All right, Casey, a couple of things here. I guess we need to say Nico Collins signed yesterday, $72.75 million over 3 years, $52 million guaranteed. You notice those top 10 wide receivers, Higgins, Chase, and Jefferson, all in contract years, not in the top 10. So they're all going above 31.3, I would imagine. And 2 of them play on the same team, which means I don't think Chase and Higgins are staying together. That's cry me a river there. The Jerry Jeudy contract, the extension, it's looking more and more affordable by the day.
Yeah. You look at those numbers. Those are quarterback numbers just 5 years ago. You see the direction that position's trending, especially if you have one of those elite guys. They're going to get paid, like you said, Jefferson, Chase. They're going to break the bank, and that's only going to go up. And then you look what they were able to kind of get ahead of it and get Jeudy for what they got him, and they're paying him appropriately. He's a wide receiver too, but it's not going to be too much longer, and that's going to be wide receiver 3 money. Just the way this thing goes. And then you look at Cooper down towards the bottom of that list, and if they're going to get an extension with Cooper, they kind of need to get ahead of it, because this market's just going to go crazy.
Yeah, all right. So along those lines, let's look at this. This is Amari Cooper among AFC North receivers the past 2 years. So he was first in receiving yards at 2,410, first in contested catches at 30, second in TD catches at 14, second in yard after catch, which surprised me, at 573. Again, those are among the AFC North wide receivers the past 2 seasons. The price for signing Cooper to an extension is probably going up. Now, the one thing, those guys that we've all talked about are significantly younger than Cooper. So you might be able to do something with Cooper where you kind of front load it. You give him a bigger signing bonus, and then you spread it out over some years, and you put some voidable years that make it more team friendly. I would imagine his production hasn't dipped. You got to find a way. The scary thing is, other than him, nobody's done it consistently in the NFL.
Yeah, and every year he gets slept on in the offseason. People talk about the Browns wide receiver group not being stellar, but if you look at him at year in and year out, he's on time, he's on schedule. Set your watch by him. He's your North Star, like that guy. And what I like about it is, yes, he's at that precipice, that they age 30, which is like a line many guys don't get to go past because their games just fall off a cliff. But his game is built to age well because it's not predicated on speed. He's an exact route runner. He sells everything. Everything in his stem looks the exact same until it's not, and the DB's already cooked. So I do envision, because that age 30 is a real number. So if you're going to extend them, you probably don't do for more than 2 or 3 years. And I think if that's going to happen, it's probably going to happen probably July at the latest. So I would expect if there is going to be movement on extension for Cooper, I would expect it to happen somewhere in training camp.
Yeah, and you certainly would think, and Andrew Berry has said, he's the kind of guy you want, you want around. The other thing is the surprising thing about him, his yards per catch, and we mentioned he's not a speed guy. They're still, and I think it goes back to what you said, the route running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he gets DBs on their back foot, and when he catches coming out of his break, if they're dipping the wrong way, there's your yards after the catch right there. The DB's got to try to take an angle, and he's not going to really just run away from people, but he does it with double moves. He gets guys' heads whipped around where they don't know where they're at. They'll get their back turned to him. Like it's a masterclass. If you were to look at the most proficient route runners in the NFL, Amari Cooper is top 5 year in and year out, and that's why his production is the way that it is. It's because quarterbacks trust him, and they should.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, can he kind of mentor Jerry Jeudy, a guy that has said that's somebody he's modeled his game after. All right, when you look at the Browns 2024, biggest concerns as we sit here in what is it, end of May, approaching June?
I mean, it's going to be this until it's not. It's Watson. Does this offense click? Does he pick it up? Is he able to get outside of his head and just play ball? Just be out there and play freely and not be stuck in your head and overthinking everything, and just rip the ball, see the open guy and just go for it, and know when to take your shots. They're going to be there, but not everything has to be a home run. You can't win the game on every play. Just go out there and execute this offense. You have the pieces around you. You don't have to be Superman. Now, you may need to be Superman in fourth quarters of games, but just let it flow. And until we see that, it's going to be hard to be at ease. And you can tell the Browns feel similarly because they stalked the quarterback room to where, you got backups and the backup to the backup who are actually proficient players in the league. So there's a contingency in place in case this thing doesn't take off, because all their eggs are in the Deshaun Watson basket.
So how big of an addition do you think Ken Dorsey is to this organization? Is he as big of a piece coming in because of the importance of Watson as Jim Schwartz was last year?
That's a great question. And you can tell by the way Kevin Stefanski talks about Dorsey without being prompted, about how impressed he is with him as a leader of men, and he's coaching up the other coaches. So to get everybody on the same page and pulling towards the same goal, it sounds like it was instrumental. And he wasn't at the top of my list going into this coaching search, but coming out of it, everyone who comes in contact with him seems just super impressed about him as a person, and the type of leader he is. And we know what he's done with quarterbacks in the past. So I would say yes. I would say even more important because of the position that he's handling on a hands-on basis is Deshaun Watson. So to get him playing at his ceiling, at his utmost, is the priority. It's priorities 1, 2, and 3 for this year. So yeah, Dorsey is that important easily.
So here's one for you. If he is able to get Deshaun Watson back headed in the right direction, doesn't he become the next hot coaching candidate?
Oh yeah.
I mean, think about it from his perspective.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
you're not wrong. If all of a sudden this is a top 5 offense and it's because of Watson's play, yeah, he'll be at the top of everyone's list.
Casey Kinnaman, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnaman, make sure you check him out. Dog Pound Daily. He is also co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. We're in this episode. Take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jacob Roach from Browns Wire. Straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Oh, hi, Dave. This is Danielle, longtime caller. I'm so excited for the new season for the Browns. I was wondering, what do you guys think about how the special teams are going and how all that's panning out and with the new kicking rules? So what do you think about all that? All right, go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, special teams is kind of going to be a work in progress. I think they have an idea because guys like Bubba Ventrone and the special teams guys are the ones that recommended the changes. But they're going to, until you get out there and are actually doing it with guys, I don't think there's any idea how that's going to work out.
Yeah, because you're talking about kind of an overhaul to kick returns, and we're looking at a situation where you're going back to two returners more likely than not, which has not been. I can't remember the time you would regularly see two returners back deep in the NFL, but that's where you're kind of transitioning. But I really like what the Browns have done the last 2 years with special teams. Ventrone is really, really well respected. They took that opportunity and ran with it when they hired him. They put an emphasis and brought in several special teams players last year. And of course, Matthew Adams and Mike Ford were the two top guys. They've moved on. Well, they went and got Tony Brown, who's really good. And then they got a Pro Bowler in Justin Hardy, who is the one that, very famously told Joe Flacco to go win his city a championship. So they have shown in the last couple of years that they are putting an emphasis on all three phases, and they're trying to make a well-rounded, they're not trying to cut any corners, and they've put a lot of money, time, and effort into special teams. I have no idea what the changes are going to look like, but there's like 4 or 5 guys, and Naheem Hines is a great returner as well. So you've got several guys with the returning experience. I think it's going to play a bigger role this year, and I think if you follow the money and follow what the Browns did this offseason, they think the same thing.
All right, so Deshaun Watson will throw in front of the media. He's been throwing, and he's on a schedule. They've said they're going to be conservative. What do you think about that? Thrown in front of the media Thursday. It's good to see, without question.
Yeah. Me and Casey talked about this last night on our show. Just kind of it feels really good to know that you're going to get something that's maybe a little unfiltered, unbiased. Like right now they're controlling everything. And I'm not saying that the team is manipulating it and that he actually looks poor when he's out there, but they're controlling everything that we see when it comes to the videos that we see from him throwing. And we're going to be able to get an unfiltered version of that on Thursday when he throws in front of the media. And I think it's just another step. It's another step into feeling, okay, hey, I don't think that if there's a problem this year, it's not because of his health, because he looks unhindered he does not look like there's any issues with his throwing motion. It looks natural. It looks like he feels good. We saw some video yesterday where he was putting a little bit more mustard onto it, or zip, like we like to talk about over on social media with Zipgate. But I just think that getting another step forward and seeing without any filters on what it looks like with him in practice. I think that's significant and insignificant at the exact same time, if that makes sense.
I gotcha. All right, takeaways from Zadarius Smith's OTA availability. We'll go through a couple of them. Believes in what they're doing in Cleveland. Commanders and Dolphins tried to get him to leave Cleveland, and he thinks Michael Hall is eager to learn. Take us through those and what you found with that.
I really thought Zadarius Smith seems like a really genuine dude when you hear him talk. Like, I don't feel like he's like trying to mislead you or anything like that. He just seems like a very infectious personality, and he's just really, I think, a positive force in that locker room. And just, when is the last time a player of his stature, like Zadarius is, I don't know, probably top 20, top 15 at pass rushers in the NFL in my mind. I think he's up there. He would be the number one rusher on a lot of teams. He just so happens to be with the reigning defensive player of the year. But when have we heard a guy like that say, hey, I need to be in Cleveland. I like what they're doing in Cleveland. Like, that is one of the biggest selling points when you're trying to say, hey, things are different. I think that's something you could hang your hat on. He just talked about the chemistry and the camaraderie, and you see it in these videos. People, they just seem like very easygoing around each other. Everybody seems to be like a tight-knit group. It started with the Greenbrier last year. The team's going to do it again for the exact same reason. It feels like that we have seen the turnaround. We have seen the turnaround. We've seen the push. It seems like players that are talented that could go play. Like, he could have gone to Miami and been that guy. Their top edge rushers coming off of season-ending injuries. He could have gone down there, probably made more money, had a bigger role, could get bigger stats, but he wants to be here in Cleveland with Jim Schwartz, with Myles Garrett, with all of these guys. And I think it's because he believes he has a really good shot to win. So he's having fun. He's winning. Those are two things we haven't seen often. So, like, I'm good with that. And his comments on Michael Hall, like, it just, one thing I have heard from everybody that I've talked to, everything that I've read, everybody I've listened to, is that Michael Hall is a genuine person that people like to be around. And he's there to work hard and help his teammates. And I think Zadarius's comments went towards that as well.
And again, important to note about Michael Hall, 20 years old. So if he realizes the opportunity that's in front of him at 20, that's a pretty good sign. Another guy that has an opportunity in front of him that you talked about, linebacker Nathaniel Watson, could have a role in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it here before. You know, Watson led the SEC in tackles and somehow sacks as an off-ball linebacker. And he's a thumper, and you don't know that you really have a thumper in there. Like, he loves to hit. He loves contact. I think early down run stops, situational pass rushing where, you know, Schwartz wants to bring 5 or, you know, or they're resting somebody, like Myles is on the sideline, you could blitz him behind that sort of thing. And I also think he'll be an ace special teamer once he kind of gets his footing. When you simplify things and you put a target and you just tell him see ball, hit ball, he can do that really, really well. And his missed tackle rate being 5.4% this year tells a lot. Like, when you're on special teams, you might be the only guy for a while. So you got to make that tackle. You got to be a sure tackler. He's a sure tackler who can get skinny, can bring the lumber when he hits running backs. And I think he's an all right coverage guy, but like early down run stuffer and blitzer to try to get after the quarterback. It just seems like you can never have enough guys that can pressure the quarterback and enough guys that can do it in a really successful clip the way Watson can do it. You know, you're talking double-digit sacks as an off-ball linebacker. And we talked about this, like, he's coming from the SEC. He has 6 years in the SEC. And I know he didn't play a ton his first couple of years of college, but that transition from the SEC to the NFL is a little bit easier than like from a mid-major like Ohio or Toledo or something. That will play a factor in his transition, the fact that he played that level of competition. And sure tackler, good pass rusher, good special teams, there's a role for that right away.
Yeah, and again, from Mississippi State, same alma mater as Martin Emerson, that's going to be a must-stop for Brown's defensive scouts. If Watson turns out like we think he might, that'll be a yearly stop. All right, before we get a break, we also found out why Naheem Hines signed with the Browns. Take us through that.
Yeah, part of it we just talked about a little bit with Bubba Ventrone. Like the biggest things he kind of talked about, he talked about his role, the way the Browns want to get more involved, running backs more involved in the passing game, and we saw that with Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford had a ton of success. I think that Naheem Hines, like, he's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. Just talking about him as a receiver on third downs and that sort of thing, I think he can do some of that stuff that we saw him do with Kareem Hunt a couple of years ago, where they line him up in the slot or out wide. I think Hines could do that even more effectively than Kareem Hunt could do. So he talked about that, like, hey, they want to try to get the running backs even more involved in the passing attack, which with Ken Dorsey kind of running some more of those option routes and some more shotgun, that kind of makes sense that they're looking that way. But Ken Dorsey and Bubba Ventrone were the two driving factors for him, having played and been around both of them. When he was in Indy and when he was in Buffalo, he spoke very highly of the two assistant coaches, and you're seeing those hires pay off because you've got a Pro Bowl returner in town as a result.
Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com and the Barking Browns podcast. And now I can step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Deshaun Watson. We'll also talk about what to expect from OTAs this week. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com. Deshaun Watson and Quincy Avery, his personal quarterback coach, talking about the Browns facing some elite quarterbacks this season in their schedule, including Jaden Daniels, second overall pick for the Washington Commanders.
Washington Commanders. That's going to be interesting because I think Jaden will probably be starting by then. And that defense versus a rookie quarterback and Jim Schwartz is going to be... It's going to be interesting. I'll just say that. It's going to be interesting. Because I think, like, you can see whatever you want in college. You've never seen a defense like Jim Schwartz in that pressure package.
Yeah. And the guys we got, too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, vets, that's experienced, that's hungry. You know what I'm saying? And these guys, hey, they're going to be piped up every week, too.
Piped up. And you're going to have to figure out how to block Miles. That's just one thing you have to do.
That's where you got to start. You got to start with that.
Get your mind wrapped around that.
Ain't no protection this week. Protection is 95. Slide his way, and we doubling him for sure.
We don't care where they bringing pressure from. We blocking him.
And Jacob, I mean, there's some truth to that without question. The other thing is, think about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You know, Jim Schwartz now has a full offseason to know how to use him. Zadarius Smith, you got Quentin Jett. There's a lot to worry about on that line.
And it's going to be very early in the year for Jaden Daniels. Like, Jaden Daniels, getting him week 5 versus week 12 could, I think, make a difference just because, you know, he starts getting settled in and some things like that. But, you know, at most, it's going to be his 5th start in the NFL. And yeah, you've never seen a guy like Myles Garrett, and I know as crazy, athletic, and elusive that Jaden Daniels is, you said it, JOK can match that. Like, so I don't know how often you've seen in college those guys that can chase you around, and the thing that concerns me the most with Jaden Daniels coming out of college is he just doesn't protect his body very often. Like, if you watch Jaden Daniels highlights, they're awesome. He wins the Heisman Trophy. He absolutely deserved to be picked where he was picked. But he takes a lot of big shots. And when you're going against this pressure package, if you're not getting down and you're running around and you're taking hits from these guys and you're starting to slow down, like, it's a recipe that could lead to just a very banged up quarterback in the fourth quarter. And I just think that is not a good recipe if you're Washington. Like, you've got to find a way to make sure Jaden Daniels protects himself in that situation if you want to have a chance.
All right, this is from CBS Sports, ranking every running back room in the NFL by tiers. So they have the Browns as tier 5, along with the Colts, and its injury concerns Nick Chubb continuing to come back from his knee injury, when healthy, among the best in the NFL. Remains to be seen if he'll be able to when he'll be able to go in 2024. They have Ford and Foreman to help cushion the blow of any limitations Chubb may have, and I think they're going to play it safe with Chubb. And I'm intrigued by Foreman. I really am.
Yeah, I think that's fair to rank them there because you're bell cow. You're who I still think Nick Chubb's the best running back in the NFL if he's healthy. We'll see when he gets back on the field, but I think that's fair because you've got a guy at the top of the list in Chubb that's hurt, and one guy that you're going to be counting on a lot if Chubb's not out there is also Naheem Hines, who's coming off a torn ACL. So he, of course, his injury happened preseason, so he's had more time to recover than Chubb has. But you're talking about two of your big contributors, especially when you talk about Hines with the special teams and the third down stuff. They're coming back from injury, so I totally understand that stuff. But man, when Foreman has gotten the touches, when people have actually have put the role, put a bigger role on him, he has been productive. Anytime he's had the ball, near 20 times, he's getting 80 yards. That's what he's done. And I think he just fills that Kareem Hunt role so perfectly. I think that Ford, what you saw from Ford, which is a little bit of do everything. Ford's kind of a jack of all trades. He does everything well, but he's not elite in anything necessarily. And he kind of struggles with his vision. But Ford can be the between the 20s runner, and then Foreman inside the red zone, especially the way the Browns like to bring in extra offensive linemen. You might see some Zach Zenner playing fullback or some things like that. He can get those hard-fought, tough yards even more so than what Kareem Hunt was allowed to do or able to do last year with the injuries adding up on him. I don't think that without Chubb there would be a top 10 unit, but I think between Ford, Hines, and Foreman, they're more than capable of getting the job done until Chubb's ready to get back on the field and be himself.
All right, so tomorrow is the day that the second week of OTAs will have media availability. What are you paying attention to? What will have your eyes?
Obviously, the Watson thing will have my attention to begin with, but I'm interested to hear from some of the new players. You got to hear from some of them last week, and this time of year you get coach speak, and it means nothing. But I think you can get some nuggets from some of the players, especially the new guys that talk about, this is their first opportunity in this organization with this regime. And they kind of will talk about, oh, I like this, I like that. I mean, Wyatt Teller talked a lot about the difference between Andy Dickerson and Bill Callahan, and how Dickerson is more of an in-your-face, hands-on style of coach. So you can kind of see how his impact is going to change the offensive line. And I think you get some of those tidbits from especially the new players or players talking about new coaches. I really like watching what they have to say because we're trying right now, it's that time of year, we're trying to get any nugget we can to understand what's going on. So media availability will have some images to see if they're continuing to do shotgun work, which it looks like they're doing, some of the evolutions. I'm just looking for any little bit I can take about how this offense is going to evolve. And I think some of the media availability from some of these players, especially the new ones, will help me get that.
So there will be coordinator availabilities tomorrow as well. So we'll hear from Ken Dorsey. It'll be interesting to see, to hear what Ken Dorsey has to say. My guess is we're going to get a lot of coach speak from Ken Dorsey.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like it's his first time speaking that there's actual practice, I believe. Because I think the only time he's spoken since coming here was his introductory press conference. Yeah, we're not going to get a ton from Ken Dorsey, but it'll be very interesting to see what he thinks takes precedent. What is it that he thinks needs to be talked about the most, and where does he go, and how does he answer these questions and talk about, because I know they're going to ask him about Deshaun Watson, how he looks, how he's going to change this offense, what things he's bringing from Buffalo, what he's learned and from his time there that he wants to continue to do, what he wants to change. I just really enjoy trying to take whatever I can, because once the season starts, coach speak is all they'll do. This time of year, we might get a little bit of information.
Jacob Roach, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you read him, brownswire.com. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.